Hey guys, this is Max and welcome to another episode of Analog Insights. In today's episode, my friend Jules and I will review the classic Mamiya M645 series. This camera came in three different versions. The original one, which was released in 1975, then an updated version called 1000S, which we are using and which is basically referring to the top shutter speed of 1/1000th of a second, which was released in 1976, and then there was a last version in 1979, indicated with the name J at the end, with a little J in the end, which stands for Junior, and which lacks a couple of features like the mirror lockup, for instance, and was mostly for export purposes. We will focus today on the 1000S, but basically everything that is being said about that camera also holds true to the original version as well. It is interesting about this camera that this really is an entry-level camera, so many people starting out with medium format are looking for that camera. It can be had comparatively inexpensively and yet gives you access to all sorts of great accessories like prism finders, meter prism finders even, and all sorts of great Mamiya lenses that once stopped down really perform amazingly, and even when shot wide open they're pretty decent lenses in most cases. Some of them come with a busy bokeh, but that's basically it. To test this camera properly, we went out on a photo walk on a Sunday morning here in Munich, shooting some Kodak Portra 400 and some Ilford HP5, so two real classics, and an assortment of three different lenses, two of which we mostly used the 45mm wide angle lens, which was really nice, and a lot of fun to use, the 80mm, the standard lens so to speak, which we hardly used, and then the 210mm telephoto lens, which was a very interesting thing to use for a change. So without further ado, let's take a look at some of the impressions from our photo walk and the images that we've taken. The Mamiya M645 shoots medium format film. So out of a typical 120 film roll, what you get are 15 frames that have a similar image ratio as you would be used to from a 35mm full frame camera, as the 4.5 by 6 centimeter ratio is very similar here. So it's easy for people just starting out shooting medium format film to get that transition and not have to start with, for instance, a 6 by 6 format that is square and completely different, of course. Another important thing to point out about this particular camera system is that you don't have interchangeable magazines. So if you think of, for instance, a Hasselblad or really advanced Mamiya RZ67 systems, you usually have interchangeable magazines that enable you to switch from, let's say, color film to a black and white film during a shoot. With this camera here, all you have are little film inserts that you could potentially preload if you have a couple of them, and then exchange them quickly after you've shot a roll. But it wouldn't be possible to change from black and white to color, or from one color film to a different one in between, because you don't have a complete magazine. So you would always have to finish a roll and then switch to the next one. which is perfectly fine because this is the kind of camera, in my opinion, that is well suited for casual shooting, photo walks, and things like that. And it's really a professional requirement to be able to switch magazines in between a shoot. Technically, the camera comes with an electronic focal plane shutter with speeds ranging from 8 seconds to, in the original version, 1/500th of a second. And the version we're shooting here, the 1000S, of course, comes with a top speed of 1/1000th of a second. This version also features a self-timer and a depth of field preview lever. So these are the specials here. The classic version already comes with a mirror lockup lever and, most importantly, what I really liked, a double exposure meter or setting, which I also tried, and you can see the result here. So this was just one attempt. It's also important to note that there are dedicated flash sync terminals, one marked for the electronic flash with an X, the other one for a classic flash bulb, of course, and the flash sync is 1/60th of a second, which is quite common. Most importantly, there are two different shutter release buttons, and this is what I really, really like about this camera, that there is one located at the traditional location for such medium format cameras, so kind of at the front and right next to the lens that you usually would use, where you usually would use your index finger to press the shutter release. But in this case, there's an additional one that is located on the top and that you can actually use with your thumb. And here I have to admit that I really, really like that. It's such a small detail and such a small feature, but you get a completely different grip on the camera, and holding it like that and then using your thumb to press it feels completely different, and sometimes it's really, really convenient. So I found it important to point that out. As mentioned before, there are lots of accessories out there. There are really great prism finders for this camera, also metered ones, by the way. There's a great lens assortment that Mamiya created over time, so you can really select from various great lenses. Even a legendary one, the 80mm f1.9 lens, if you really want to shoot extremely wide open and with a very shallow depth of field on medium format film. And the camera takes a 6-volt battery that is still available, so you won't have trouble finding a battery that fits this camera. So what about the handling, and what are our first impressions after this Sunday morning photo walk? Well, to be honest, I was really surprised by this camera and had a lot of fun using it. I particularly liked shooting it with just the waist level viewfinder and using my thumb on that upper shutter release, because it really feels like such a small and compact camera and like that, and the handling is just amazing. You can easily move around, except if you have a 210mm lens on it, but if you have a wide angle or the standard 80mm, it really feels compact and nice. And at the same time, you're shooting medium format, so you get a relatively small camera. You don't lug around a large medium format camera. It doesn't feel like that, and it almost feels like a 35mm camera in many ways. And we could also see that by the way we used it and how much we shot with it. That was really interesting. I think I also liked it in the combination that we had with a rather small handheld meter. That was a traditional old classic Gossen meter that we brought along, and that just felt right in this combination. So you took your time metering, and then it didn't take a lot of time framing your shot, focusing and doing the actual shot. There was no fussing around with a magazine or a dark slide or things like that. So really, really cool. What I also want to point out is the build quality here, because this really surprised me. Some of you might know that I have a Mamiya 645 Pro TL, which is a much later and more professional version, but that younger version is actually quite plasticky in comparison to this classic old late 1970s model that really feels solid and beautiful in terms of build quality. Once you press the shutter, you can still hear what is kind of common for these cameras. It's not the most exciting shutter sound, but except for that, it was really a beautiful experience, and I can highly recommend taking a look at this camera, especially if you're just starting out shooting medium format film, or you're kind of interested in moving in that direction. Then the 6x4.5 format is a great way to start, and yeah, this particular camera system as well, as it is rather or comparatively inexpensive to get into it. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Analog Insights and this review of the Mamiya M645. If you did, please remember to like this video and maybe even share it with your friends. And if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe to our channel. Jules, Greg, and I really appreciate it. So thanks for watching. I hope to see you soon. Bye.